Okay, good morning. We are quickly reviewing our Unit 6 because we just want to go over it a little bit more before we take that test. So instead of having the test today, we are doing our review test on Friday. So what we just talked about in the classroom was how we should write down on our help sheet all of those words that we would use from the verbal phrase. Write down what operations they are. What are the words that go with the operation? So for adding, write down from objective 32. Write down what words are subtracting, what words are adding, what words are multiplying, what words are dividing. We talked about how 87 less than z, we have to have z, and we're taking the 87 away. Sum means to add, so we have our number added to 7. So now we're at the quotient. Tristan just told us that the quotient means divide. So the quotient of 17 and a number. So we want 17 divided by our number. And then we have an expression. So if it is an expression, you need to turn it into a verbal phrase. So we look at that 15n and we have to think what operation is happening with 15n. Will? Say that louder. Multiplication. Because we know when the number is right next to our letter, it means to multiply. So how would I write that in words? Landon?
15 times.
Yeah, 15 times a number. Is that the only way we could write it? No. We could say 15 multiplied by a number. We could say the product of 15 and a number. Okay, we have that list of words that means multiply. So look at your list and use one of them. Any questions on the verbal phrase or expressions? Okay. CO33. I can evaluate algebraic expressions. Evaluate each expression when A equals 4 and B equals 7. So that means wherever we see an A, we're going to put in the number 4. Wherever we see a B, we're going to put in the number 7. So I'm going to rewrite my expression with the numbers filled in. Then I can use my calculator. You can do the math on your own if you want to do the math on your own. If you want to use the calculator, you can. Remember that we work from left to right and we follow PERMDAS. So if we look at this, we see 14 times 4. So 14 times 4 is 56. Divided by 7. 56 divided by 7, we know our math facts, we know it's 8. For number 6, we have always rewrite your problem. I saw a lot of us yesterday not rewriting the problem, putting in the numbers, and then we were making mistakes. We were forgetting what we were doing. Rewrite the problem. I know it takes a little bit longer, but you're going to get the correct answer. So it's worth that little bit of extra energy you have to put into it. Rewrite the problem. So 28 divided by B, B is 7, times A, which is 4. So working left to right. 28 divided by 7 is 4, times 4, and we get 16. So just rewrite your problems. Don't try to remember, okay, 28 divided by 7, I think that's 4. Okay, now I need to multiply by 4. What number? Wait, 4. What number was I multiplying by? 7? And then I saw somebody put a 28 down because they forgot what they were doing. Write it down. There is no bonus points for mental math. Seriously, no bonus points at all. You get credit for doing the problem correctly. Don't do mental math if directions don't say do mental math. Write it down every step. Now this time we have x equals 4, y equals -1. Again, I'm going to write down my problem, filling in my variables. So I'm going to work left to right. 18 minus 4 is 14, plus 4 gives me 18. For number 8, 4 plus 14 plus a -1. So I have 4 plus 14 is 18 plus a -1. I put the parentheses around it so it doesn't look confusing with the plus sign right next to the negative sign. What is 18 plus -1? Tristan?
17.
Yeah. Any questions on filling in or substituting in those numbers for your variable? Feeling good about that? Because I saw quite a few people struggling on that yesterday. I would like you to hear the reading, please. Can you wait? And all right. So, anybody want extra practice? Nick?
What do the parentheses mean if you round the number?
So, I said I put parentheses around it because if I had 14 plus negative, it looks kind of goofy with that plus right next to the minus. So if we put the parenthesis around it, it just reminds us that it's a -1. That's all it's doing. Otherwise, you look at it and you go plus minus. What does that mean? Plus minus. Okay. So it just you can put the parentheses around it just to keep that negative sign with the 1. All right, CO34. I can simplify algebraic expressions. Oy, a lot of us forgot how to simplify. Remember, simplifying the expressions mean you're combining like terms. So you need to see which variables are the same. Which constants don't have the variables. Combine the constants, combine the same variables. Nolan?
So number 1 would be 15x, right?
How did you get that?
Well, because they all have the same constants, and so I just add up 4,
They-
8, and 3, and I get
They
15.
all have, yep, you're right, they all have that same variable. So we can combine them all. 4x plus 8x is 12x plus 3x. 12x plus 3x gives me 15x because they all had the same variable. If this was a y, if it, instead of 3x it was 3y, would we be able to combine it and say 15xy? No, because they're different variables. You can't combine them if they're different variables. They have to stay separate if they're different. So for number 10, what are my like terms? Anthony?
12n and 7n.
12n and 7n. I had some people that said, oh, I'm combining the like terms, 12 and 7, 19n. Why would it not be 19n? Justin?
Because the 9 does not have a variable next to it like 12 and 7 do.
No, if I'm combining 12n and 7n, some people said 12n plus 7n gives you 19n. Why was that wrong, Mia?
Because we're not adding.
Because we're not adding. We have to pay attention to what operation we are doing. There is a subtraction here. So we need to do 12n minus 7n. When I say combine like terms, I don't say always add them. So what is 12n minus 7n? Regan? 5n plus 9. Can I combine any more?
No.
No, I can't because they're not like terms. One is a variable, 1 is a constant. Yes.
What if it was n in front of 9? Would that count as a constant or no?
We don't write n9. It's just not how we write it. So you'll never see that. Okay? It'll always have the number, then the variable. All right. 11 and 12. Ooh. Almost everybody forgot how to do that. So on the answer key, I did this. What does that mean? Zoe? You have to multiply that 4 into both of them. We want to get rid of the parentheses, and we want to multiply that 4 through it. So 4 times x.
Crosses out. It's like
4 times x becomes 4x. Then 4 times 3 becomes what? 4 times 3. There's no x involved, so it's just 12. And then what's my operation in the middle? Okay, so that's all we're doing. We're multiplying that number on the outside of the parentheses, multiply it into both numbers on the inside. If it has a variable, it has a variable when you multiply it. If it doesn't, if it's a constant, it stays a constant. So same thing for 12. Well, and I should say your operation stays the same. If you're adding inside the parentheses, you're adding outside the parentheses when we get rid of the parentheses. So if we look at 12, we're going to do that same thing. So what should I write? What would that become? 7 times 2x minus 1. What does it become? What do you think, Aiden?
14x minus 7.
Perfect. We multiplied 7 times 2 is 14. It has a variable, so we keep that variable. 7 times 1, there's no variable, it's just a constant, so we keep it a constant. Our operation stays the same. Okay? How do we feel about that? Does that make sense now that we've gone over it? Okay, this was a big one that I wanted to make sure that we went over before our test, because so many of us forgot what to do with those parentheses. All right. CO35. I can solve one-step equations with addition or subtraction. Solve for the variable in each equation. So if I'm solving one-step equations with addition or subtraction, what am I doing? When I'm solving that equation, Landon? Help him out, Aiden.
We have to get n by itself.
Yeah, we want to get that variable alone. So we want to get the variable by itself. So if it's 20 plus n, what do I do to get the n alone? Peyton, do you remember?
No. I'm trying to remember what it is. I don't remember.
So the math word that we used was inverse operations. Inverse means what? Opposite. So we want to do the opposite to get rid of that 20. So if that's a positive 20, what's the opposite of it, Nolan?
Subtraction.
Yeah, I'm going to subtract 20. What I do to one side, I have to do to the other side of the equal sign. So if it's plus 20, I want minus 20. 20 minus 20 is 0. Don't need to write a 0 down because 0 plus n, that's just redundant. We don't have to do the 0. So now we have our n alone. We have to do our math on the other side because whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. Just like with fractions, whatever you multiply the denominator by, you have to multiply the numerator by. Same thing with algebra. Whatever you do to one side of the equal sign, you have to do to the other side of the equal sign. So we have 43 minus 20. What is 43 minus 20? Tristan?
23.
23. That's it. That's our answer. We solved for n. N equals 23. N is by itself when we can say n is 23. How can I check this, Kira?
You have to put it in the variable.
Yeah.
Put in your answer.
I can put that 23 in for n. And I can say 20 plus 23 equals 43. Yup. Same answer. I know I did it correctly. How many of us checked our answers yesterday? That's not even half the class. Put that variable back in and checked it. That's going to help you catch any mistakes you're making. Did I do it right? So you want to always check your work. Did I do it correctly? Number 14. What should I do? What's my first step? Zoe?
Well, I have a question.
Yeah.
So, why do you have to do the extra math? You can easily just, like, figure out the answer by doing, like, 20 minus what?
43 minus 20.
Yeah.
So this is what you're doing in your head. You said, oh, 43 minus 20. The reason I have us do 20 minus 20 is because when we get into our multi-step problems, it's not as easy just to do it in your head. So with the simpler problems, sometimes we look at it and go, oh, I know what I'm doing. I know this is the answer. I want us doing all of the steps so that way as we build on it, we know what steps to do. So it might seem like extra math, but it's getting you in the habit of doing it. So when we get into the more complicated multi-step problems, we know exactly what to do. Because a lot of us, when we got to the two-step, we went, oh gosh, now what? Okay. So if we understand how the one-step works, the two-step goes a whole lot easier. All right, number 14. That was a great question, by the way. Number 14, what should I do to solve for n? Will G.
Add 11.
Yeah, and minus 11, I want to do the opposite. Do that inverse and add 11. So minus 11 plus 11 gets me that 0, so I have my n by itself. Negative 2 plus 11. What is negative 2 plus 11? So think about that number line, and if you need to draw a number line, Anthony, 9. Because that negative 2 makes us go to the left. Then we want to check our answer. Did I do my math right? 9 minus 11 equals negative 2. Is that right? If we look at the number line, if we're at 9 and we subtract 11, we end up at negative 2. So I did my math correctly. Now, this last one, people kind of overcomplicated it a little bit. So we want to look at what it says. We need a variable value of 6. So your variable is your letter. So if I use x for my variable, I need to make an equation using adding or subtracting. Nolan, what would be an example?
X plus 4 equals 10.
X plus 4 equals 10. If I put a 6 in for x, 6 plus 4 equals 10. Is that right? Yeah. So when I correct your tests, I'm going to take the 6 and I'm going to put it in for that variable. And I'm going to see if I get that answer. So you need to just make an equation using 6 and then take the 6 out and put the variable into it. So we know 6 minus 5 equals 1. So I'm gonna take that 6 off, and I'm gonna put an X. Okay. So what you have to do is make an equation with 6, and then erase the 6 and put your X. Okay, that's all you have to do. Make an equation using that value. If you're adding or subtracting, make sure your equation has adding or subtracting. When we're multiplying or dividing, make sure your equation's multiplying or dividing. You would be surprised how many of us do adding and subtracting up here and then do adding and subtracting down there. Make sure you're following the directions. So just do your equation and then erase the value that you were supposed to use and put your X. So I can solve one-step equations with multiplication or division. We're doing the same thing we were doing with adding or subtracting. We just have different operations. So again, we're looking for that inverse. We're looking for the opposite. If we're multiplying, then we divide. If we're dividing, then we multiply. So let's look at 17. What should I do? Negative 8n equals 40. If it's at negative 8n, what operation is that, Josie? Yeah, this is multiplying. Negative 8 next to the n means we're multiplying. So what's the inverse, Josie? I'm going to divide both sides by negative 8. So negative 8 divided by negative 8 is that 1. What is 40 divided by negative 8, Zoe? Ah, good catch. It is a negative 5. So again, another thing you can put on your help sheet, if you don't already have it, if you multiply, when we multiply or divide a positive and a positive, our answer will be a positive. When we multiply or divide a negative and a negative, our answer will be a positive. When we multiply or divide a positive and a negative, our answer is negative. So we had a positive 40 and a negative 8, so our answer is negative. If we multiply or divide a negative and a positive, our answer is negative. So write that on your help sheet so you remember. Sometimes when we get to a test, we forget those simple things. You might say, oh, I know that. I learned that last year. I got it. But you might forget it. So if you write it on your help sheet, that's just a reminder to check. Did I put the right sign? Let me check my work. Negative 8 times negative 5. Does that equal 40? We have a negative times a negative, negative times a negative, so it's a positive. 8 times 5 is 40. Oh, it works. I did my math correctly. Let's look at 18. What am I going to do to solve this problem, Lily?
You're gonna change the division to multiplication.
Yeah, we want to do the inverse. That fraction bar means divide. So we want to do the opposite and we want to multiply. So I'm going to multiply by 4, multiply by 4. So multiply and dividing by 4 cancels each other out. 8 times 4 is what?
40. Oh, no, not 40. 32.
32. It's a positive and a positive, so my answer is a positive. So now I'm going to check my work. If I have 32 divided by 4 equals 8, 32 divided by 4 is 8. So now I want to write an equation using multiplication or division with a variable of 7. Who can give me an example of this? What would be a good example? Josie? Sorry, say it a little louder. 3n equals 21. So to check that, what I'm going to do when I grade your test, I'm going to put a 7 in for n. 3 times 7 equals 21. Yep, that's right. Remember, you just do your multiplication or division problem using a 7, and then take the 7 out and put an x or an n, or whatever letter variable you want to use. Okay, how do we feel about our one-step equations? Adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing. Show me your thumbs. How are we feeling? Okay, people are feeling very confident with this. Regan, you were gone yesterday. How are you feeling about one steps? Okay. It's a Wednesday. Before I forget, Wednesdays you stay after, right? So are you planning on staying after today? Perfect. Okay. So now we did our one steps. Oh goodness. Now we have those two steps. Is there really that much difference?
No.
We know the opposite of adding and subtracting. We know the inverses. We know the inverses of multiplying, dividing. Now we just have to do one step at a time. We know how to do this. The first thing we want to do is our constants. Take care of the constant where there's no variable. Do that inverse. Rewriting your equation. So take it one step at a time. Rewrite those equations. I'm not just doing it to make you do extra work. I'm having you rewrite so you stay organized and you know what math you're doing. When you get up into pre-algebra next year, it's going to get even more complicated. Get in the habit of writing it out. Again, no gold stars for mental math. All right? Rewrite your equations. So looking at 21, with what I said about doing constants first, what math am I going to do, Nolan?
Subtraction, because it's the
What am I going to subtract?
Oh, 3. It's 3 or 6. 3. No, 6. What?
Which one?
6.
We're going back and forth. We have plus 6, so we want to subtract 6. So you got confused because we had two different numbers. Remember, 3n is multiplying. We don't want to subtract something that we're multiplying. Those are not opposites. We only do the opposite operation. So if it's plus 6, then we want minus 6 on both sides. So again, rewrite your equations. So 6 minus 6 is 0, so I just have my 3n left. 21 minus 6 gives me what? Tristan?
15.
15. Now what do I do? If it's 3n, and I said 3n is multiplying, what's the opposite of multiplying, Scarlett? Dividing. So if I multiplied by 3, I want to divide each side by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 1 times n is just n. So I'm going to leave it at that. Now I'm down to my n. 15 divided by 3. Can I leave it at 15 thirds, Nolan?
No.
No, I actually have to do the math. I cannot leave that fraction as an answer. I've got to do the math. What is 15 divided by 3, Regan?
5.
5. So now I'm going to put my 5 in and see if I'm going to check, did I do my math correctly? I need to multiply before I add. So 3 times 5 is 15. Plus 6, 15 plus 6 does equal 21. I got the same solution. So I did my math correctly. Number 22. What is my first step? Kira.
You do with the addition, you turn it into subtraction. So 3 minus 3 is 0. We'll cancel.
Mm-hmm.
And then 9 minus 3, which would be 6.
Good. So I'm going to rewrite my equation. 3 minus 3 you said was 0, so I don't have to write that. 9 minus 3 you said was 6. Now what do I do? What's my second step, Nick?
Your second step is to don't you subtract 4?
Why would I subtract?
I mean, don't you multiply 4 times 6?
Ah. Yes, because we always want to do the opposite. We are dividing. That fraction bar means divide. So the opposite of dividing is multiplying. So I want to multiply both sides by 4. Always double check, are you doing the right operation? Check to make sure you're doing that opposite. Add, subtract, multiply, divide. If you forget which two go together, look at the two objectives right above it. It says add, subtract. It says multiply, divide. So it's telling you what those inverse operations are, just up top higher on the page. So multiply by 4, divide by 4 cancels each other out. So I'm left with just n. What is 6 times 4? Will? The other Will?
24.
24. So now I'm going to check my work. 24 divided by 4 plus 3 equals 9. 24 divided by 4 is 6. Plus 3 equals 9. 6 plus 3 does equal 9. I did my math right. Seriously, we don't want to have to do retakes. Check your work. If it does not make sense, go back and figure out where your mistake was. 23, what's my first step, Mia?
Put 18 under, you would add 18 plus 18 and add 22 plus 18.
Good. Because I was subtracting 18, I want to add 18 to both sides. Minus 18 plus 18 is 0, so I'm left with my 8n. 22 plus 18. You guys are so distracted. Let's just now. What's 22 plus 18, Ryan?
22 plus 18 would be 30.
Don't forget to read that one over.
Oh, my bad. 31.
On the 10 side. 2 plus 8 is 0.
Yeah. Oh.
40. So, on the test, you can use your calculators, okay? So you're not on the spot doing that mental math. Check your work. That's why we have the calculator option available, so you can check your work. What's my next step? Gregory, 8n equals 40. Remember, I have to do the opposite. What operation am I doing with 8n? Yeah. 8n is multiplying, so I want to divide both sides by 8. 8 divided by 8 is 1, so I'm left with my n. 40 divided by 8 is what, Mia?
Let's see exactly.
40 divided by 8.
5.
5. So I want to check my work. 8 times 5 minus 18 equals 22. 8 times 5 is 40. Minus 18 does equal 22. I did my math correctly. Any questions on the two steps? Anthony.
Wait, how was 18 plus 18 0?
It's not 18 plus 18. This is a negative 18.
Oh, it's a negative 18?
When it says minus 18, minus means negative. Okay, so minus 18 plus 18. If you have minus 18 and you add 18, you're going to end up at the 0.
I thought it was like 8n minus 18.
So we have 8n minus 18. So we've got that minus, so we want a plus. Minus 18 plus 18. They're opposite numbers on the number line, right? Okay. It's a great question. So when you see that minus 18 and you do the plus 18, they're just canceling each other out because you read it as a negative 18. No. Very distracting. All right, any other questions? No question is a question that shouldn't be asked, because if you're wondering it, chances are somebody else is wondering it. Then we come to our inequalities. Oh, we just covered it and everybody forgot. N plus 15 is less than 27. I had a lot, not everybody, okay. Most people forgot, not everyone. I had a lot of people who graphed 27. And then they said, okay, it's just less than, so it's an open circle and it's pointing to the left. Perfect, done. What's wrong with that? Kira?
We have to solve it first, but also are we meant to switch?
I'm sorry, what?
Are we meant to switch?
Yeah, we're down to the
9:55. We're doing a full math class today and a full language arts class because we're not doing science or social studies. So, why is this wrong? Kira said we have to solve it. We have to get n by itself. So don't be confused by that inequality. You're still doing that same one-step problem. So what should I do, Anna? If it says n plus 15, how do I get n by itself? What's the opposite?
Subtract.
I want to do minus 15. So n plus 15 minus 15 gives me just n, less than 27 minus 15. What is 27 minus 15? Peyton?
12.
That's what I'm going to graph. And I'm going to say, okay, my less than, there's no equal sign, so it's an open zero or open circle. Less than points to the left, so my arrow points to the left. So look at number 26. I need to solve it. I want n by itself. How do I get n by itself, Maya? I'm dividing by 4 in my problem, so I need to multiply by 4. Times 4 divided by 4 cancels out, so I'm left with my n less than 20 times 4. What is 20 times 4? Aiden? 80. And then I need to graph that. So I'm going to look at that and say less than does not have an equal sign, so it's an open circle. Less than points to the left, so my arrow goes to the left. Look at 27. Anthony, what's my first step?
You do plus 22 and plus.
I have to add 22 to each side, so I get n by itself. Minus 22 plus 22 leaves me with my n, greater than or equal to 20 plus 22 is what, Anthony?
Oh,
20 plus 22 is what?
20. 42.
42. So now I need to graph that. I'm going to go to 42 on my number line. I've got my circle. Is my circle going to be an open circle or filled in, Landon? Filled in because there's an equal underneath it. Then greater than points to the right, so my arrow goes to the right. Look at 28. Nick, how do I solve that?
28.
So negative n is less than or equal to 90.
It's less than.
Sweetheart, we have to solve it. So we have to get n by itself. So if it's negative 9n, what's the opposite? With negative 9n, what operation are we doing? No. When that number is right next to a letter, remember we multiply when the number's right next to the letter. You're getting confused by that negative. So let's just say 9n. Right? So if it's 9n, that means 9 times n. So it's a negative n, we're multiplying by the 9. So if we're multiplying -9 by n, what's the opposite of multiplying? Yes. So we need to divide by -9. Divide by -9. So -9 divided by -9 leaves me with my n. 90 divided by -9 gives me what? 90 divided by -n. Aiden.
10.
-10. And remember, when we are using inequalities and we multiply or divide by a negative, what do I have to do? Remember on our binder sheet, I did this. Don't forget this. Put it on your help sheet. What do we do when we multiply or divide by a negative number? Anthony?
It's always a negative.
Nope.
Oh, no.
Maya? You flip what your inequality is. So instead of less than, it's going to be greater than. It's on your binder sheet. Put it on your help sheet. Right, CO38, because it only applies to CO38. That's the only CO about inequalities. So put CO38, put a little star next to it, and say, when you multiply or divide by a negative, flip the inequality. So you know if you're going to multiply or divide by a negative, only at CO38, because that's the only one doing inequalities, flip it. So thank you to my friends who are actually putting it on your help sheet so you remember. If we have one of these on our test, you already did, yes. Those of us that stayed after school with me already have it on their help sheet. Okay, we want to remember to do that. Any questions about the inequalities? Okay. Any questions about graphing our inequalities? Remember, the first thing you have to do is you have to solve for your variable. Just like we did with the one step, you're doing that with the inequality. You're doing the same math, you just have an inequality, not an equal sign. So now he tells us, Mr. Schultz told us which review items we're going to do. So let's review those items. I can apply the order of operations. What is my order of operations? Aiden? PERMDAS. What does PERMDAS stand for?
Parentheses.
Exponent and radicals multiplied by subtraction.
So, parentheses, exponents and radicals, multiplying and dividing, adding and subtracting. Are you done writing, Tristan?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I
So,
see
is everybody ready for me to erase?
No, I need the thing up there, like the positive.
Oh, that's already been erased. So, ask one of your friends or ask me after class.
Look in your binder.
No.
It is on a binder sheet. You are correct. So, let's practice PERMDAS. So I'm going to write it up here nice and big. If I have how would I solve that? What should my answer be? Ryan?
You do 3 times 5 first.
So in PERMDAS, I hit multiplying and dividing first, so I need to do my multiplying and dividing first. Again, I'm going to rewrite my equation. So what is my answer, Ryan? 17.
That really confused
Look
me.
what happens if I don't do it correctly.
I thought that was 3.5.
If it was a decimal point, it would be down. It's not down on the bottom, it's up here. So if I did left to right, right from the start, and I did 2 plus 3 is 5 times 5, I get 25 for my answer. Order of operations matters. It does give you different numbers. So remember, PERMDAS, you might want to put that on your help sheet. What does PERMDAS stand for? Break it up. Parentheses, exponents, radicals, multiply, divide, add, subtract. Remember, you start at the left and you work your way across. Were there any parentheses? Nope. Are there any exponents or radicals? Nope. Is there any multiplying or dividing? Oh, yes, there's my multiplying. I want to do that first. What about if we have this? I'll do the little X there for my multiplying for you. So you remember that it's multiplying. What do I do first? Will?
Multiply.
Ooh. Will's saying it's multiplying and Peyton's saying it's dividing. Hands up if you think you multiply first.
Wait, hold up. Wait. Yeah, I do too. I know.
Oh, look at everybody that's just following. Oh, somebody else is saying, oh, yeah, that must be right.
No, that's not what it is. I see.
Peyton is correct.
What? Yeah. I thought it would be multiply.
Our layer is multiply, divide. Whichever one you get to first, you do. It doesn't have to be you multiply first and then you divide.
I thought it was,
They're at the same level.
I thought it was because M was in front of D.
I know. Everybody gets confused by that, Nolan, and that's why I did this problem. So it doesn't matter which one you get to first. You start at the left and you work your way to the right. Whichever one you come to first. Oops, I come to 18 divided by 3 first. So I'm going to do that. Now I come to my multiply.
12 is correct.
If I multiplied first, I would have had 18 divided by 6 equals 3. Very different answer. Adding and subtracting, multiplying and dividing, it does not matter which one you get to first. It's always the first one. They're the same level. Yes?
Will those be on the test?
Well, it says I can apply order of operations. So that's being able to apply the order of operations, right? So you need to remember when I do this, it means whichever one I hit first as I read from left to right. All right. Next review is I can identify and calculate equivalent fractions. So you might see something like, what is an equivalent fraction to 3/4?
Oh, I know one.
Nolan?
75%.
That is not a fraction. That's a percentage. You changed 3/4 into a percentage, but that's not what the question was. What is an equivalent fraction, Peyton?
6/8.
How did you get 6/8?
Well, 3 can go into 6 and 4 can go into 8.
Well, why couldn't it be 6/12 then? Because 3 can go into 6 and 4 can go into 12.
The denominator cannot be more than the numerator.
No.
No, I know what it is.
How did you go from 3 to 6? What did you multiply by?
By 2.
How did you go from 4 to 8?
I multiplied by 2.
You have to multiply the numerator and denominator by the same number. So you were correct. 6/8 is an equivalent fraction, but we need to understand why it's an equivalent fraction. We multiply the top and the bottom by the same number. So you might get a question that says, what is an equivalent fraction to this fraction? You might see two fractions.
Percentages is pretty easy.
Are these two equivalent fractions?
Yes. No. Wait. Hold up. No, they're not. No, they're not.
Ooh, I see some people say yes and some people say no.
The 16 has to be 20. You can make the 16 has to
Oh, Nolan, explain to me why these are not equivalent fractions.
because you didn't times the 4 by 5.
I times 3 by 5 to get to 15. That means I have to times the 4 by 5. 4 times 5 is not 16. You have to multiply the top and the bottom by the same number. So if you're given two fractions, are they equivalent? Well, to go from one to the next, you have to multiply by that same number. You have a big brain. We all have big brains.
Big brain.
I have.
Landon, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because we know 3 can go to 15 and 4 can go to 16. But it's not equivalent fractions. So you have to multiply by the exact same, or divide. It works the same way going smaller. So if we had, and we wanted to divide, what could I divide out of 20 and 28? Anthony? What could I divide out of 20 and 28? What factor do they share, Lily? 4. 20 divided by 4 is 5. 28 divided by 4 is 7. So you can divide down, you can multiply up. You just have to remember you have to do the same number to the top and the bottom. Same number. Coordinate plane. I can, look at this. I can find the slope of a line on the coordinate plane. How do I find the slope? What's my formula? You remember, Peyton?
You go up like
What do we call it? What do we call that?
rise and run.
Right. Oh, get those help sheets out. Slope equals rise over run. The rise means up or down. Run is to the right. Remember, we always go from the left to the right. What else should we have on our help sheet? I'll get you in just a second. What is the important thing to remember about that slope with the run? With the rise?
You start with the closest, the dot that's the closest. You start to the left. The dot that's closest to the left, that's where you start.
Yes. But what do we know if we go up?
Oh, it's positive. Then if you go down, it's negative.
If we go up for our rise, it's positive. Down equals negative. Nolan, I need you to go sit at the bar table. So, good things to put on your help sheet. Seriously, good things to have on your help sheet. It's going to help you with that question. Zoe, what's your question?
I have a question, but
Yeah.
we have to go.
We have until 9:55. Oh, it says 9:50. Thank you for paying attention. It's the 10:55. All right, so, hold on. The very last one is I can graph a function. So that function, you need to remember our function table. We need to graph the x and the y. Zoe, thank you for paying attention. Sanitize and head to reading. Please prop the door open. Prop the door open, friends. Hello. Gregory, did he leave all right? Gregory, did you watch the clock? You gotta go. Sorry, it's a crazy schedule. So he is coming. Thank you. Bye. like stand here.
No.
Just stand here.
No. Everybody has to get up. Everybody has to get up before you get on the thing.
Shh. Quietly.
She was supposed to come back.
Oh.
Didn't she come back today? Where did I put my sweatshirt? I don't know. Where did you put your sweatshirt?
Oh, Ethan's my boy. Ethan, why did you drop your computer on your desk? What are you doing?
Great. Now we can't have a great ball.
We're gonna put 3 more plots going.
I got you, my guy.
I won 5 last. Bro, I haven't won once in the past 4 years.
Haven't won once.
Oh, I haven't won zero since kindergarten.
Bro, I won 2 times and it was on my birthday that I won. I gave like 3 posters one day.
For our math.
We should at least be the 8. Yeah, even cookies aren't necessary.
It's my backpack, bro.
Oh my goodness, I forgot to stop recording.